isn't anymore, which is why it's been able to,
Move along here. Colin Foster, does Putin care that West misrepresents his idea?
I don't think so. I don't. I remember one of the first interviews I did on BBC many years ago, and it was essentially the same question. How do you think Putin reacts to criticism from the West? And my answer was very simple. I said the Russian people elected him, not Western politicians. And that's the difference between Putin and Yeltsin. Yeltsin was very sensitive to what Bill Clinton would say, slapping him on the back, a really disgusting clip. No, Putin cares about what the Russian people say. He was elected to serve them, and he's not going, and he'll do whatever he believes necessary to protect the interests of the country at the expense of being unpopular. I mean, I asked him that question in Valdai a couple of years ago. I got really slammed for it too, because we were sitting in Sochi. We were in this auditorium, and it's full of all these Western think tankers and former politicians and business people, and the atrocious Western press, atrocious. They loved asking questions to hear their own voice. They could care less what Putin said in return. That's the caliber of media today. But I remember they were, everybody wants to ask a question, and there was a guy behind me from Russian language television. I think it was Первый канал, first canal, and they were giving him the microphone, and I grabbed it, and everyone was kind of shocked, and I looked at the guy that was giving out the microphone, and I just said, let me do it. He said, all right, go ahead. And I asked him, I said, Mr. President, I don't know if you look at news magazine covers and political cartoons and whatnot, but I mean, you're one of the most demonized people in the world, in history, actually, in the West. But if you go outside of the West, you're seen as very much as a crusader defending your own country and pushing back, because you can push back. So how do you react to your critics? And I'll tell you, people were throwing these parenthetical knives at me for asking that question, because what I was doing is I was mocking the crowd, which because they're all highfalutin and superior to everybody else and whatnot. And he answered the question in a kind of very diplomatic way. But they answer the question, no, of course not. He could care less.
Yeah. All right. Alexander from Global Citizen. So far, Russia has been able to maintain national sovereignty from the Washington Consensus. This fell under Yeltsin. What are the chances of this happening again? What are the dangers of transition?
I think it's very unlikely that it will happen. I think that the entire political system, and I don't just mean these constitutional changes, I think that the entire all the people who make up the political system are determined that it will not happen again, because they remember the disaster of the 19th.
How bad? Well, look at the neighbor, Ukraine. Look how bad things can get.
Exactly. I think the kind of people who would want that to happen, you will find most of them in London and New York now, to be frank.
From Flying Boar, Peter, from Brave New Perth, Peter, will new reforms affect Russia's foreign policy?
I don't think so. I think that what they have right now, and we have acting Foreign Minister Lavrov. I'm wondering what's going to happen. I mean, that's the buzz right now in Moscow. That's the political buzz. Is he going to stay on? Because he's 71? I think he's time. Yeah.
And very tired apparently.
Well, yeah, there he is. And very popular. Yeah. Second to Putin. That's for sure. To answer the question right now, in light of these proposed reforms, I don't think there will be a different trajectory at all. I think there'll be more continuity. More than anything else. And I think you can see lines of continuity very clearly in Russian foreign policy. Stresses diplomacy. I think we're going to get that. If Lavrov decides to retire, that will be a really big question, because those are such huge shoes to fill. Huge shoes. But they do have it. They have a very talented Foreign Service diplomatic corps. Very talented. I've met some of them. I met them Russian Foreign Service workers in Kabul, for example, and the number of languages they could speak. It was just extraordinary how well educated they are. I mean, they really create some really good diplomats here. And I think that will stand to continue. And Russia's foreign policy interests, I don't think, are going to change significantly. I mean, of course, we all have to react to events in the world, but Russia's on a pretty stable trajectory, and I think it'll stay that way.
Okay, from Flying Boar Alexander, Medvedev should have been gone a long time ago. He is filth from Yeltsin era.
Well,
That's unfair. That's unfair.
I think that is unfair. I mean, Medvedev is, as I said, the connection Medvedev has is with Putin himself. Medvedev is a very, very able lawyer, and I've heard this from people within the Russian legal establishment, is that he's considered to be one of the most talented constitutional lawyers in Russia. I would not be surprised, by the way, if he'd helped to draft some of these ideas. The problem was, when he became president back in 2008, he came to the presidency without much political experience and as a lawyer. He is a much more experienced man now. And if you follow his actual comments, the things he says, and I actually did a long article about this for the Duran about a year and a half ago, he's actually far more critical of the West than Putin ever is. And it's a fact that people are not really aware of.
You remember Michael McFaul saying, looking for the divisions between the cracks and all that, which was completely illusory.
It was completely illusory. And in fact, can I just say on this is where I first got to know Peter, not directly, but long before I, in fact, got to know Peter directly. But I remember him reading Peter's articles at the time of the so-called reset, in which Peter was saying that this attempt by McFaul and Obama to play Medvedev and Putin against each other is completely misguided. And of course, so it turned out.
Okay, Peter from Flying Boar, please, I don't want to see Navalny and his thugs in the streets of Moscow. Navalny.
If they don't break the law, they can walk the streets. Okay, that's as simple as that. Look, he is a construct of the West. He's nobody in Russia. No one takes him seriously. Okay, the people that take Navalny seriously can't even vote yet. You get my point? They're just kids.
Okay, from Valley S, a $20 super chat. Love the Duran. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you, Valley, for that super chat. And the last super chat from Lakeva, $10 super chat. Boris and Natasha say Russian collusion, fake news. Work of moose and squirrel.
I really love telling my Russian friends about that. And I pick it up on YouTube and Choto said, that's what we think of you. Okay, that's how I was brought up to think about you in your country.
All right, and those are all the super chats,
It's
guys.
really interesting is when they were doing Bullwinkle, when that came out, that was, when they premiered during the Cuban Missile Crisis. And the government officials called them and said, maybe you should take a break. I mean, we're in a crisis right now. Because it was stoking up fears and all of that, and these images and these exaggerations. But I mean, it really played a role in real politics, the Cuban Missile Crisis. Amazing.